Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Crystal Clear. I am excited, probably super excited to have a wonderful guest today, Miss Sonya Moore, author, and I'm going to let her introduce herself the rest because there's so much to unpack here. I'm so excited. So, how would you like to introduce yourself today, Sonya?
Oh my gosh, starting with the hardest question here. Uh, I don't know. I'm just this human being, spiritual being having a human experience, adventure loving, fun loving, inquisitive, curious person who's, now an author, yoga teacher, dabbling in graphic design, photography. What else? Yeah, I'll just leave it at that for
Awesome.
now, but I'm
Also
very excited
awesome.
to talk to you too.
I'm just very excited about this synergistic connection that we've had. I read your book, Some Kind of Magic, which we're not going to give away the details, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I will say I'm having adventure withdrawals and just honestly, I read the book and I had my moments where I was like, okay, I think I need to figure out a way to put my life on pause for 6 months and explain to my family that I just have to travel the world and explore and live in these little towns that I've never heard of, that I can't pronounce, and eat super authentic cultural food and just make these great connections. And then I'll come back a whole new human and everything will work out fine. I don't think
Or
it'll.
maybe you can take them with you,
See, so
or
I want to. I really feel like I'm being pulled to hike Machu Picchu for my 40th birthday next year. So that is
Yes.
my request. I was like, I just think I want to go. I want to have a 40th birthday bash, and then I just want to go explore Peru and kind of wander around. And I don't know why I'm being so pulled there. I
Who
feel like
knows why
there's
these things happen, but I would
yes.
trust that. And have you been to Peru
I've never been to Peru.
before?
No.
It's an amazing place. If you like to eat, which I love to
Yes.
eat, the food is just incredible. They've got like 700 varieties of corn and 1,000 varieties of
Oh
potatoes or
wow.
something like that. I might be mixing that up, but yeah, it's so much fun. And yeah, Machu Picchu is really incredible. And even the town next to it, which, if I'm remembering right, I think it's called Aguascalientes. But it's so fun. It's this little town that's like in the middle of nowhere. And it kind of feels like the wild, wild west. Yeah. I think you'll have an amazing time.
That was kind of my thing. I was like, I want to do because we have a travel planner that's helped us with travel since we went on our honeymoon in Bora Bora, which was also an amazing trip. Took forever to get there, but that was okay. It was well worth it. But I like to do the deep cultural things. I don't want to do the touristy things. I
Yeah.
like to live like the locals and eat like the locals and not do the tours. And some tours are okay, like, but the adventurous ones, like, I like activity as well. So that's what I really
Yeah.
appreciated about you sharing your experiences. So thank you so much. What was that like for you? Writing a book, and because I've always debated, and I will one day. I've actually said it since I was a little girl. I'm going to write a book one day. Little did I know I would have this much life to like write about. Um, I just feel
I
like it's
know.
such a level of vulnerability to put aspects of your life together like that and put it all out there. So, how's that process been for you? What has it felt like?
It was an interesting process actually, because I guess really it started way, way back, like you, when I
Mhm.
was little, probably like 8 years old or 10 years old or something. You know how people ask you what you're gonna be when you grow up? I would say, I'm gonna be an author. I'm gonna write a
Aw.
book. And in my head, I had these visions of being like the world's youngest famous author at like age 12, which never happened
That's okay.
because I had nothing to write about at age 12. But, that kind of went into the back burner and stuff, but I've always loved to write, but I've never been like, I've just written my own blog, but I've
Yeah.
never been, like, writing for newspapers or magazines or anything.
Mhm.
But anyway, so, yeah, I just had this whole experience of this travel, which ended up to be 3 years of travel, and I wasn't planning to write a book while it was happening, but it was just at the very end, like the final month or so, or 2 months, felt so much like a movie to me. And, it kinda, once it had all happened and I was kinda trying to digest everything, I'm like, "Wow, like, that was really very magical," and I feel like it's meant to be shared, actually.
Right.
Because I learned so much through it, just about the way things actually work in life. And it's not like it's anything new,
Mhm.
like you can read The Alchemist and like learn a lot
Right.
of the same things, but I'm like, wow, this is really real life. Like it really does work this way.
Right.
And so I kind of spontaneously decided, like, I think I'm gonna write this book. It was also kind of everything aligned because it was during COVID and I had ended up in this new country where I didn't know anyone, had no job, didn't have anything to do.
Perfect
I'm like,
timing.
well, I have the time. Yeah. Nothing, if not now, when? And but when I decided to write it, I thought it's gonna write itself. I actually said that out loud, which I found out is not actually the way it works. It's like the plot was written, but I still had to find the words to describe it. And it was only while writing it that I actually realized how vulnerable of a process it is and how many personal details I actually had to share. And I was like, "Ooh." So there were times where I'm like, "Ugh," like cringing, like, "Ooh." And then but I kinda most of the time I was just sort of like in this
Yeah.
zone of writing where I'm like, "Well, I can edit it later," And it was at the very end where I just actually got terrified in when it was completely done, it had been through the final editing, and it was going to be out there in a month or 2, and I just really got terrified.
Yeah. Almost like a
And I just thought,
vulnerability
"What if?"
hangover or something like, okay, like this is real.
Yeah.
Like that's my life. And that's my experiences.
Yeah.
And now everyone's going to see it. I put all of this energy into it, because it's like energetically, I'm
Yeah.
sure that was a lot. So to see it
Yeah.
all packaged in one beautiful little book, it's a really beautiful cover.
Yeah. Thank you,
So
thank
yes,
you.
some kind of
Yeah.
magic is the name of her book. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for that. And there's so many, like you say, there are so many things that happen in your life and you just trust that they're happening for you, right? Like I think that that's been a biggest part of my journey is understanding life's not happening to me, it's happening for me. There's plenty of times where I
Yeah.
could have taken things to a whole different level, but it's like, you know what? I'm going to roll with it. Like if this happened, I'm going to accept it. I'm going to honor it. And we're going to, if we need to pivot, we pivot. If we don't, we don't. And learning to surrender to that is a huge thing. And it doesn't always work out the way you anticipate. It doesn't, I mean, you mentioned pandemic. I mean, none
Usually
of us
doesn't.
anticipated
Yeah.
that, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it was so different for every
Yeah.
individual, had such a unique experience with it. But for me, it was one of those opportunities to kind of sit in the stillness and totally reevaluate my life and make changes. And I've been open about all of that on previous podcasts. And that's what kind of led to doing this is getting to that space that you said you got to. Like, I feel like this is worth sharing because I feel like people need to hear it. And if one person out of the however many hundreds and thousands listen, that's all that matters to me is that it touches like one person and in hopes that it touches
Yeah.
more. But the fact that it's just
Well,
like
it already has for sure.
in that trickle
Yeah.
effect, it's really
Mhm.
cool to just
It's
know
so
it's out there for a purpose.
Yeah, it's so exciting, and I really think that that's kind of what we're all here for, right? Like, we're here to live and also to share. Because
Right.
then so many of us are going through similar things, like, maybe with different details, but really essentially at its core the same thing. And just, like, going back to what I was talking about of being terrified, it's kinda now come full circle because I got over the terror now that it's out there, and it is so rewarding and validating anytime there's a person who sends a message and is like, "Wow, I just wanna let you know, like, this really touched me for this reason, I'm going through this, and this is helping me so much right now." I'm like, "Wow, it's totally all worth it." Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I did a retreat a couple weeks ago, like 17 ladies, small little mini ladies retreat in the evening, and the topic was surrender to the flow, which is kind of what our theme of our podcast today, as we previously discussed.
Oh,
Like, let's put it
okay.
all out there. And it's interesting because I had some notes written down of like some talking points and journaling points, and because I always kind of like to leave it open and gauge the energy in the room. And of course, I totally changed it because you get there, and I knew two of the ladies, but there were 15 ladies there of all different age ranges. I would say probably 25 to 70. And I could almost feel what they kind of needed. And energetically, you can kind of feel how you need to shift things. So I feel like retreats for me have been something that has been so invigorating and has allowed me to really start trusting myself and my intuition more and and owning it, because sometimes we can like blurt out something because that's what intuitively we think, but it's like, but that touched that person and that is what she needed to hear. And so I feel like every time I do something like that, it's more and more confirmation that like this is where you need to be. This is what you're supposed to be doing. This is what I actually just had a big shift in perspective. I think it was this last full moon. I don't know about you, but I feel like I've released a lot of things with this last full moon. And even yesterday, I
There
felt
was something about that mood.
yes, I felt so like
Yeah.
almost overstimulated with life. And I don't know why. There was no particular reason. I almost felt like a colander, where there's like water coming out of all different spaces. Like that was me. But then today, totally different perspective. But it was one of those like revelations of, I have on my website personal training, and I just stopped teaching and training because I just feel like, I was getting up super early and training 3 people and then teaching 2 classes before the rest of the world got up because it was so early sometimes. I'm
Oh,
like,
wow.
I don't want to do this anymore. And I just shifted it. And I'm like, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore. And that's okay.
I think that's so cool that you're like aware of that, like to aware of what it is that you want and willing to like, oh, okay, change
And it was
direction.
when it got to the point, and I love everyone I was working with, dear friends of mine, of course. Like I love the connections, and that's why I was doing it, because I love the connections and I love the feeling, and teaching a class and the way it makes me feel, the way it makes other people feel. Like that was the rewarding, fulfilling part. But I feel like when that started to shift a little bit and I started to get a little tired, I was like, oh, let's switch it. So revamping some stuff, and I'm gonna switch out the personal training, take that off. I mean, I think I had a couple people come on that still wanted to do things, I would do it. But and then change it to retreats, because I feel like, again, that's something that I'm really being pulled to do. And it's just one of those the synchronicities that come along. And our chiropractor asked me to do one, and then I was asked to do one somewhere, and I'm like, okay. I mean, people are asking, let's just do this. Like, let me put it out there. So that's been my personal just kind of surrender revamp for the past week, actually. It just shifted this past week. So it's something I have been doing, but something I've realized I want to put more energy into, and realizing that, again, I love the connection piece of it, and I love
Me
that
too.
part of it. So
Oh, that's very cool. It's all
yeah,
about alignment, right?
it really
And
is.
just following
Yeah.
following
Following
that,
your
following
path.
those little guideposts of synchronicities and stuff. And I saw recently a photo that I don't know if you had posted or someone posted and tagged you of a retreat you did recently. It looked so
Yeah,
nice.
that
I
was the
was
one I
like,
was
I
talking
want to
about.
go.
Yeah. Well, when you're in Florida next time, we'll have
When
to
I'm in Florida,
create
yes.
one. We'll create something
Yeah.
fun. So what are
Yeah,
you
I'm
up
excited
to?
about that.
What does day-to-day life look like for you, without giving away too many spoilers?
Oh, yeah, well, it's changing now because I finally finished this whole audiobook process. The
Yay.
audiobook just got published yesterday on Audible. That was a really long process of creating that.
What is that
But
process
I'm glad.
like? Do you just have to literally film and read your book out loud?
Yeah, and so I guess most people probably just rent a studio or
Mhm.
recording studio, and I live in Papua New Guinea, so I honestly didn't even look. I'm like, I don't know if there are sound recording studios here, but I also have this wonderful laundry room that I could just cover with foam and turn it into a sound recording studio. And so I did that. thinking to myself, our apartment's very quiet. And then I start recording and I realize like people are doing construction next door. And then, like every time someone takes a shower, like the water's going through the pipes. So anyway, it was definitely a learning experience. If anyone is out there recording an audiobook and wants to commiserate with me, please contact me. I would just love to share horror stories. Like what could possibly go wrong?
Should start a whole support group.
But, yeah. Then I also got a cold and lost my voice in the middle of it. Anyway, but it's finally done. And yeah, it was actually really fun. I love these kind of technical things that I get to learn of like the whole editing and mastering of the sound because I knew nothing about that before and now
Yeah.
I do. It's kind of fun. So anyway, that is done. So I will now have a lot of free time. I'm leaving tomorrow for Bali, leading to yoga retreats there next month. And so yeah, that'll be the month of June. It's been really fun. The past week and a half, I've just been in retreat preparation mode. And
Yes.
that is such a fun mode to be in when the creativity is just flowing. And yeah, I've been thinking a lot about flow lately. It's really all about
I love that.
going with the flow,
And what does that
right?
mean to you? Like going with the flow. Give us kind of an example of what a day in your retreat would be like. Let's go to Fantasyland right now. We're all going to Bali for a
Mm.
minute. So we're
Ah,
coming with you.
okay. Okay, so one sample day, you might wake up early and we'll have the first yoga class starting around 7:30. Feel free to get some tea or something beforehand if you want. And so probably 75-minute yoga class, then optional meditation at the end, because most people coming are interested in meditation. So yeah, then after that, breakfast, very important. Delicious Balinese breakfast of fresh fruits and fresh everything. Beautifully plated with edible flowers on the plates,
Oh,
fresh coconut on the side. After that, some free time. And then part of the retreat will be in Ahmed, where there's really amazing snorkeling. So our hotel's on the beach, and you can just walk out into the water, and there's incredible snorkeling out there, which is this very zen experience. And then a little more free time, and then lunch. And then in the afternoon, depending on the day, there'll be more free time, or there might be a cacao ceremony, for
so
example.
awesome.
And then, yeah, and then there might be a Balinese dance performance along with dinner. And there might be an ecstatic dance in the evening. Yeah,
That sounds
sample day for you.
amazing. So before you release to the public next time you're doing this, I need the inside scoop.
I'll keep you posted. A few
Yes.
people have been asking for another one this year. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll do one in November or something. I'll have to check the weather.
That would be awesome.
But
Or whenever you do it next, that would be amazing. And I've never been to that side of the
yeah,
world. So
it's very magical. It
I've
really is. It has
always
a
wanted
really
to
special
go.
energy.
Yeah, that is amazing. I'm so excited for you. And, going with the flow, you recently, we connected on social media. You recently posted about a pretty intense go with the flow moment that you had. Would you it was very impactful for me to read about that because I find myself to be a very spiritual person and very spiritually open. And I feel like, things do or don't happen for a reason. And I do believe in like miracles. I don't want to give it away. Can you, would you be comfortable describing to us
Yeah.
that experience for you and what it was like and where you were and kind of give us a visual of that day? Because it's really impactful. And I think that that's something that can reach a lot of people on a different level.
Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, I would love to talk about it actually, 'cause it's just something I've been reliving every day. It's probably the most wild experience that I've ever had in my life. And it's also you're a perfect person to talk to about it because I think we're aligned in this way. I also think things happen for a reason, and I really do just looking at it, I'm like, wow, I really think this was meant to happen. But I'll explain the whole thing. So what happened, we were out on this gorgeous waterfall hike here in Papua New Guinea, and we had spent a couple hours just hiking through waterfalls, and there had been rain the night before, so the current was pretty strong. Um, a lot of people were slipping, sliding, falling into the water and everything. This is Papua New Guinea. It's the land of the unexpected. So got to be ready for anything. But anyway, everything had pretty much gone fine. And it was at the very end of the hike. And we had gotten to this kind of smooth stretch of the river where it was flat. And there was like a waterfall above and then like a waterfall below that we couldn't see for the record, but we could hear it. So you could hear it was pretty strong rapids. But it was really beautiful. So we stopped there and people were like filming with drones and taking pictures. And so I waded into the water and sat down on this little part on the edge. And my friend came in with me and we were fine because we had our feet like wedged against rocks and stuff. And then she got up to get out of the water and she walked out. And I stood up and I was going to follow her. And then I turned around and looked behind me. And it was just so beautiful. Like, I'm really crazy about waterfalls. It's like my dreamland, right? And I'm like, oh, the current doesn't look very strong in this little spot right here. I can just walk 5 feet back to this smooth rock and then lounge in the middle of all of this. So I take 2 steps that way. And then the water's about like waist high. And then the current grabs me and just pulls me. I'm like, oh, crap. And so I'm kind of swimming, like I probably got 2 strokes in trying to get to the far side because there are rocks over there and like trying to grab hold of something so I don't get pulled over that giant rapids waterfall. And I managed to get to the other side, but then the current pulled me underwater and had me just basically plastered against the side of this giant boulder. And I've never felt force of water like that. It was just pummeling me and I couldn't move. I couldn't get myself up to the surface. And like, oh, this is bad. So for a while I'm, struggling, trying to just push myself off the rock or like somehow wiggle myself off, and nothing that I try is working. And so I'm down there and I don't know how long it was, a minute or two. There were a lot of thoughts that went through my mind during that time, but I fully realized that was so stupid of me to walk into that strong current. So stupid. So I take full responsibility for for that and getting myself into this predicament. But then I'm like, okay, is someone going to come and pull me out? And I realized no one, first of all, they can't see me because I'm underwater, and they can't cross over to me because they'll get pulled into the river too. So I'm like, well, I mean, is the universe going to get me out of this? I don't think so. Doesn't seem like it. Which is funny. It didn't even occur to me to like pray or ask for help or even like wish myself out of there. I was just like, I guess
Acceptance.
the universe. Yeah.
Well, I'm here.
I guess
So
yeah. I guess universe, you can see me if you want to get me out. But it was funny, like, because I can't claim that I had a lot of faith or trust in that moment. I had zero hope by the end. Like after a minute and a half, I'm like, nope, this is it. Like I need air. I cannot get to the surface. Like this is actually how my life is going to end, which was so weird. I'm like, wow, like 2 minutes ago I was fine, and now I'm here and I'm gonna die just because I decided to walk to that rock. Like how dumb. And I wasn't happy that that was how my life was ending, but I'm like, well, I can't change it. And so I just accepted that I was gonna die finally. And I've always thought that drowning would be a horrible way to die.
same, drowning or fires, I feel like would be.
Yes.
Those are two of my like
Yeah.
fears, like fire or drowning.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And I'm like, wow, like I'm about to discover what that's going to be like. That's probably going to be awful. But then I thought the silver lining is I will finally find out what's on the other side.
Right.
I've been very curious about this for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like I would be the same way. I'm like, well, here we go. I'm going to have all the answers. I'm going to come back and tell everyone all the answers. Like, I'll be back.
You're planning. That's hilarious. It didn't occur to me to come back.
Right. I'm going to tell everyone about this.
That's so funny. So I just accepted it. And in that moment of acceptance, I didn't consciously relax, but I did relax,
Mhm.
like my whole being, my body, my mind. I'm just like, okay, it's over. Game over. Bye, world. Next realm. And I thought that I inhaled, but I clearly didn't inhale because I never actually breathed in water. So it must have been in that tiny space of time of maybe a little exhale and then that pause before the inhale that something shifted. I felt like I wasn't stuck. And for a moment, I just felt like I was floating. And I guess because I was thinking about death and I was kind of thinking about the cosmos, I didn't even feel like I was in water. Like I felt like I was just floating in
Mhm.
space. And I'm like, oh, what? And then I kind of felt like I was lifting and then turning. And then I was moving forward. And then all of a sudden, I find myself just like standing behind this waist high rock ledge at the edge of a waterfall, and I can breathe. I'm like, oh, I'm not dead. Oh my God.
Oh
And
my god.
yeah, it was crazy. And I thought, wow, okay, the universe did get me out of there. And I wasn't analyzing what happened at the time, but afterwards, talking about because I was with a group of friends, so they were
Mhm.
all across the river, and they were like, "It's a miracle that you didn't hit your head, that you came out totally fine." I was basically unscathed,
On your feet.
and I was thinking, yeah, on my
On
feet.
your feet.
Yeah, on my feet. Because also I wonder, I'm like, okay, is there a way this could happen that was not a miracle? Like maybe just by profoundly relaxing your body, somehow like the pressure doesn't leave you stuck. But then I'm like, how would I turn around? How did I not go down on my head
Right.
first? Because I should have gone head first. But yeah, somehow I turned around and there must have been this underwater channel through the rocks that took me out beside the waterfall instead of like through the waterfall. And behind this perfectly placed rock ledge that could stop my fall. And yeah, so I ended up then, just to finish it off, I was there for probably 30 seconds to a minute, just focusing on breathing. And I wasn't
Right.
sure where to go from there because
Like, did you have
there
a
was
moment
rocks.
where you were sorry to interrupt, but did you have a moment where you're
No,
like,
go
"Am I
ahead.
really dead? Like, is this like, did I survive this?" Like, I feel like I would be like touching the rock, like smacking my face, like, "Am I alive?"
I was,
Because it's like almost
yeah.
an unreal experience. I'm just picturing all of this,
Yeah.
and it's like then you just like she stuck the landing, like.
Yeah. I don't think I had that. And I think it's because having analyzed this afterwards, I have felt and noticed divine intervention in my life so many times
Yes.
before,
Yeah.
but it's just never been in a situation like this of
Right.
life and death.
Yeah.
But so I mean, I was surprised because I had given up all hope and was 100% sure like this is the end. So I was surprised, but then at the same time, I wasn't. I was like, oh, of course the universe got me out of
Right.
there. Like, or I mean, not of course, it didn't have to. Like, that
Right.
was
But
really very gracious, and I'm very grateful. um, and I will consider every breath that I take from now on to be a bonus. Every day is a bonus and a gift, which I've also realized I should have been looking at life that way anyway. Like every day is a gift.
that's what I was and my question was gonna be, what's shifted for you perspective-wise just since that moment? Because I feel like when you get to a point where you feel like you may lose your life, or especially as close as you got, and it's not funny, I'm not laughing, but it's, like, crazy. It's
Yeah,
just such a crazy situation.
yeah.
Like, what changes in your everyday perspective? Like, what do you feel like has been the biggest shift in your, like, everyday flow?
It's I think it's making me more accepting of everything in general, which is, I'm sure, a lesson that I needed, which is why I really I really feel like this probably might have happened for a reason, even though I'm kinda like, well, it's still my fault for walking into that current, which
Mhm.
is a dumb thing to do, but maybe the universe knew. Like, we know we can lure her in with this beautiful waterfall setting. But anyways, because 'cause I'm a person, I tend to want what I want and sometimes get a little too like fixated on what I want. And if things don't go my way, I don't necessarily react well right away. I may catch myself after a while, maybe 5 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe a couple days. But now I'm really trying to be like, okay, but it's okay. Like, let's just accept this. And so it's yeah, that's I've just been thinking so much about the power of acceptance because I think acceptance does bring that relaxation, right? It's
Mhm.
that resistance going away. Like all the resistance just fades. And I guess there's something about that that allows this mysterious power that's all around us, like this power of like the divine or life or whatever you want to call it, to just flow and then take you to wherever you're meant to go. And yeah,
I
it's
feel like that
really
incident really happened to like ascend you into this new level of your spiritual journey, into your like more of an awakened zone, because I mean that's what I feel like it's done for me, is understanding things that I've had to go through, whether it was like the PTSD and be like, okay, well, I accept that, but I'm gonna figure it out. Or just life in general, just having all of these things happen, and whether between like what it is that happens, like the stimulus, the situation, the pause in between, like, am I going to respond or am I going to react? Because if I react, it's going to take a lot of different energy. I feel like my reactions came from like past conditioning, or, beliefs that I may have had, or the way I wanted things to go, or lack of acceptance, or whatever, like that caused a reaction. But if I can force myself to pause in those moments and really understand and even think, like, how am I going to feel about this afterwards? Like, if this happens, how am I going to feel? If this happens, how is it going to make someone else feel? And think of more of the feeling behind it. It encourages me to respond instead of react. So that's been one of the biggest things for me with acceptance, is taking the pause. And, sometimes, if my 4-year-old is running out in the middle of traffic, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna pause.
right. Not the
That's
time to
that's
pause.
not
Yeah,
what I
true.
mean.
There's a time
And
for everything.
sometimes
Yeah.
we are made to
Yeah.
fight, flight, respond. But what I was realizing when I was, and kind of in that stillness of COVID, I had a lot of unintentional reactivity. Like, I was reacting to things, and it's like, well, why? And I realized I just had so much built up inside me that I hadn't fully processed through, or didn't know how to process through, or didn't have assistance process through. I just moved through it all so much at a pace. But being in that stillness was like, oh, you don't have that pace anymore. What's your excuse now? So that was kind of my big, okay, now you have this stuff in front of you. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to view it differently? How are you going to do it differently? How are you going to, manage life differently? So the acceptance
That's
part of it was huge, though.
so huge and it's so life-changing, right? And my brain wants to talk about two things at once. I love that you brought up the pause, so I want to come back to that.
Yeah.
But I also want to say that a couple days after this happened, I listened to your solo podcast
Hmm.
that came out like 2 episodes ago, where you were talking about how you had gone to Sedona for
Oh,
that
the
retreat and
cacao
then you got
ceremony.
sick
Oh
and
my gosh.
oh, was it yeah, and that but I loved how you just accepted it and
Mhm.
surrendered and were like, "Okay, this is what it is. Maybe this is what I needed." And instead of being upset about it and like energetically fighting and resisting it, you just surrendered to it.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, it's kind of the same thing,
Yes.
actually."
I
That I
it I
just
mean, it really, and some of that was kinda scary. I'm like, "Am I gonna be able to get home?" Like, obviously not as life or death as your situation, but it was very uncomfortable, and I just trusted that I needed the discomfort for some reason. Like, why? And I
Mhm.
literally, like, laid there, "What is this all about? What does this mean?" I remember journaling, like, because I didn't have really much else to do. I was, like, burning up with a fever and just thinking to myself, like, "What does this mean for me?" And it's, I wouldn't have gotten that stillness at home, even if I were sick. I wouldn't have had the
Mm.
opportunity to look out at the red rocks and allow the fever to take its course. And because I'm one of those people that doesn't really like to break fevers unless I have to. I feel like they're there for a purpose, and my body trying to repair itself. The sore throat part was terrible though. I couldn't swallow for a
Oh,
day. But
oh,
trusting that I kind of got pulled out of a situation I didn't really want to be in the first place. And
because people were
trusting
so
it was
bubbly and
just a
stuff.
lot. It was a lot for
Yeah,
me. And
yeah,
I loved, they were all super sweet ladies. It was just a different vibe than I anticipated, and
yeah.
I respected the fact that they were having so much fun, and I was like, I would have been the fuddy duddy anyway, so they don't need me. Like, they're having so much fun. So it all really worked out for the best and highest
Although
good.
I cannot see you as a fuddy duddy.
No, I definitely would not have been a fuddy duddy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I
I
do.
do. I am sad that I didn't get to do some of the empowerment journaling stuff that we had anticipated me going for. But you know what? Just do another one. Do something different, and that's
Yeah,
okay. But
yeah,
surrendering to
yeah.
that and just owning it, like this is what this trip meant for me. I was really glad I got my solo cacao ceremony as how I started that retreat, and I had never done one before. So, do you perform the ceremonies? Do you lead them? Because they
Mm-hmm.
are
Yeah.
magical. I swear, like I felt the energy shifting in my body during the sound bath afterwards. And I mean, I still feel like it's shifting. I feel like it's just this constant flow of just change right now. I feel like I'm in a very transitional period and still trying to figure it out. But could you explain to us, for those who don't know what a cacao ceremony is, since you perform those ceremonies, I would love for you to explain, because I had people ask me, and it's hard for me because I'm not as, I'm like, I did it and I'm not as knowledgeable about it. So like, I'll try all the things, but I would love for you to explain it to the guests.
Well, I can tell you how I do mine, but yours sounded next level. Like I want to go and
Okay.
do one with that lady that led yours
She's
because that
amazing. I'll
was
send you
like
her
many
contact.
many other things besides the
Yeah.
cacao. So, because cacao, it's just a substance, the same substance that chocolate's made
Mm-hmm.
out of. Thank you, God, for putting chocolate on this
Oh
planet.
my gosh, yes.
But
Yes.
yeah. But ceremonial cacao is just prepared in a different way with different intention. And so the way we usually do it is we have it comes like in a big chunk. And you can also buy it in a powder, but I do like the big chunk because then you get the whole process of like
Mm-hmm.
taking a knife and like shaving it and like making it into a powder. And then you just put it in a little pot with, we like to use like almond milk or something, like
Mm-hmm.
some kind of vegetable milk with it, and add some spices like cinnamon and cloves and whatever you want to put in there, and a little bit of sugar or honey, and just prepare it. And then we'll usually do it with oracle cards. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I do it with my partner a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just do it the two of us. But if I do it in a group, like I did lead a cacao ceremony a couple weeks ago. It's like full moon cacao ceremony. And so we just had a circle and I put out the oracle cards in the middle. And then you just sit down, and because the cacao it's a heart opener.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it does just kind of literally open you a little bit. And it's very gentle,
Right.
right? It's not like, for example, ayahuasca or something that's gonna like knock you
You've been
knock
doing
you
all the
down, right?
things, coming out of
Yeah.
all the places.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. But it's also has a little bit of caffeine, so it's
Yeah.
a stimulant as well. So, there's so many ways to do it. You can set an intention, or you can also just start talking and like
Mm-hmm.
just see what comes up. And then when you pull the oracle cards, you can ask a question if you want, or just see what comes up. And it's amazingly usually perfect. And it just ends up to be this like beautiful circle of connection and synchronicity
I love
and
that.
just feeling good. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I just felt like it was magical, and I want to do another one. And I want to go somewhere to like a native land where they perform them and have it done like within the culture, because I think that would be something really
Yeah, like in
awesome. Like
Mexico,
Margot, who did
Caribbean.
mine, lived in Guatemala for a few years, and she did this beautiful
Mhm.
chanting, and I'm like, "Did you just make that up?" She's like, "Yeah, it just channels through me." I'm like, "Oh my god, it was magical."
That's incredible.
Like, it was
Oh,
magical.
yeah,
I am
I gotta
really
get the info from this lady from
yes,
you.
I will send it to you. I was really I'm always been very intrigued by channeling. I feel like I can kind of channel feelings and thoughts. I've never tried to verbally channel or like it's sometimes when I meditate, like I might say something or hum or something like that a little different, but I'm very intrigued by it. I always feel like it's so beautiful and it's also different from everyone that I've heard or ceremonies that I've been to or different groups and I remember as a child one time I went to a church and they were speaking in tongues and I literally was terrified. I was terrified. I hid under the bench. I was like, "Oh my god, what's happening?" But that's channeling. They were just channeling their own, and
Yeah,
I didn't realize at the time. And I'm like,
yeah,
"Oh,
the
now I'm super
spirit,
open to
yeah.
all the things. I think it's just
Yeah.
cool."
Yeah, I think it's so cool too. I'm really intrigued by that as well, and I think that's something that I
Excuse me.
could develop because I feel that I get in my own way a lot.
Same, same. I'm like, "Am I
Like,
gonna sound funny?" It's like, "What's gonna come out?" And then I start thinking about something, and then it's gone.
yeah, yeah. Because it happens to me. I guess it's usually fear-based, right? Like
Right,
anytime we're in our own way, it's all
right.
fear-based because I feel like, okay, well, I need to prepare what I'm gonna say because if not, I'm not a person who's a great speaker off the top of my tongue, like I need to have an idea or I might just sit there in silence with nothing to say. That's what I'm afraid of.
And sometimes that's okay
But,
too. Sometimes that's what we need. I think
yeah,
I think more of us need
right, the
that actually.
silence.
I think sometimes we all need the silence.
Just
That's
stop talking.
seriously, I sent my
You're
husband a message
good.
yesterday when I was having my day and I'm like, I need a day with no technology, nothing to do, no one to take care of, and no one around. So, like, I just need to breathe and I need to be outside. It's like,
Yes.
okay, I love you.
That's and by the way, that is an amazing thing to do, and I used to do that during COVID around once a month or once a week. I would usually do it on Sundays, I think. I would just disconnect myself
Yeah.
from everyone, which I would just turn off my notifications is how I would do it because I love learning, so I would still have technology, like, if I wanted to
Right.
Google something on
But
my
not
computer.
answering emails and texts or on social media. That's what I meant. Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's,
and I would isolate myself. I
yeah.
wouldn't see anyone, and it was fantastic. I loved it.
That fills me up
And I
so
just
much, and usually that's my
yeah,
walks for me, like, I won't take my phone, let everyone know where I'm going, all my kids, and just I have to go and be outside and
yeah.
connect with the birds and the trees, and sometimes we have this really cool spot called Waterside near us, and I'll go and they have hammocks, and I'll go and lay on a hammock halfway and just chill out for a
I
little
love
while,
hammocks.
although it was, like, a record high of 97 degrees here today, so it's getting a little warm, you have to go early in the
Oh, that's
morning, it's
crazy.
hot, which I don't
Wow,
mind the heat,
yeah.
I'm a Florida girl, I've born and raised here, so it doesn't bother me. I don't mind the heat. I like to sweat. I love the sunshine, but sometimes it's a little brutal. But that's
Yeah.
being out in any
Oh,
nature for me, I think
so
is
healing,
so
right?
healing. It gets me right away. Even there was a situation this weekend where I was helping my husband book a flight. He's going out of town. I was getting him situated. The TV was on. My little guy was playing with a toy crane. Toy crane's like making this noise, and he's like, "Mom and Dad, look at Mom and Dad!" And I'm like, "I think I'm gonna walk outside. I'll be right back." And I walked outside, and we have this swing hanging from a tree, and I just laid there, and I was like, "Oh my god." Like, I just need to
Yeah.
breathe. But I know that about myself. And I feel like
Mhm.
Crystal from 2 years ago would have tried to push through the situation. I would have snapped at someone or something. I wouldn't have had the tools to just take myself outside, which seems like such a simple task. It's like when in doubt, just take a walk outside.
Yeah, I'm very similar in that I need my little windows of solitude to recharge, and I didn't know used to know that about myself, and it was so detrimental to me because I would just feel like, okay, well, everyone else is socializing, so I need to go be part of the group, and I would just like my batteries are just empty, and I don't feel good, and then my energy's not good, and like it's not a positive experience for anyone to be around me, and I'm like trying to fake it, and it's not working. So I'm glad that I know now
And is that
what to
one thing that
do.
you feel like all of those years of travel for you really taught you, like being kind of in isolation by yourself? You didn't have a lot of friends or relatives around you, but, traveling by yourself to different places and living in different cultures, do you feel like that's when that shifted for you, or what do you feel like that shift happened?
I don't know at what point in my life I figured that out. I think some things we just learn
Yeah.
through age,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's like,
Wisdom.
oh.
With the wisdom.
But I did wanna go back to what you said about the pause,
Yes. Yes, please.
because that's such an interesting topic, and it's something I've thought about a lot, just over the years, but especially recently. And I'm curious to know if you've noticed this as well. For me, I know that if I go too long without meditating, I'll notice that I lose actually that little pause before reacting. And it's such a huge difference. And I'm like, oh, shoot. Because, you're like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have said that or done that. And then if I do, I'm really regular and disciplined about my meditation, there will just be like that little space of the pause where I'm like, okay, no, I'm not going to say that. And of course, I'm thinking about this because of the underwater experience where I ask myself now, like, if I wouldn't have had that little pause where I just accepted,
Mhm.
if I would have instead reacted just really furiously and been like, "Yeah," that who is that author? It's like Robert Frost or whatever, who's like, "Do not go gently into that good
Yeah.
night," or whatever. Fight against the dawning of the whatever it is. Like, if I would have been fighting, like, would I have gotten pulled out of there, or would I have just drowned?
I mean, you probably would have exhausted your energy resisting the situation and hyperventilated and swallowed water and drowned. If you think of it from that kind
Yeah.
of standpoint. And I think that's a good kind of metaphor for life. Like if you fight it, if you resist it, if you continue to not accept, then you do kind of take on that drowning energy. Like you take on so much
Mhm.
unnecessary suffering if you
Right.
keep trying to resist situations that just they will be how they will be. It's interesting because we actually I'm on the board of Resilient Retreat, and we had one of our participants who who lost her life. And so a lot of people are
Mhm.
experiencing some grief, and I feel like that's with grief. And for me, because I know she was so at peace and in a great space for herself when it happened, like, I felt peace for her. Like, that was my initial feeling, like,
Mhm.
although there was sadness, but there was peace, and I'm like, "I think this is the first time in my life I've experienced grief this way." I had my grandmother, my paternal grandparents, essentially the grandmother who raised me, passed away in 2013. And I remember all types of ways of grief. Like you have like the happy grief where you miss them, and then the other where you're angry. And I went through all the different ways. Obviously, it was someone
Mhm.
much, much closer to me. But I feel like grief is one of those things that if we choose to kind of hang on to it and miss the ideas of like, we resist it. If we resist the situation, then it makes it harder for
Yeah.
us. Because if you think of like you said, okay, well, I guess this is next. Like my spirit's on. I've always been one of those firm believers. Like when it's my time to go, it's my time to go. Like my husband's like, oh, there's doomsday, there's solar stuff. He's preparing for like we're getting a bunker. Like he's preparing for the end of the world, and I'm like, don't worry about getting supplies for me. Like when it's my time, it's my time. I just feel
Yeah.
so complete, I guess. I don't know. I just feel so at peace. I don't know if it's my father because my father
Yeah.
passed away when I was younger. So I think I just have a whole different perspective on it, maybe that I've just never, death is something that I've never feared. And I feel like that is kind of odd. So to hear your story, I think
But
I would have
wonderful.
probably, I mean, I can't say that I would have reacted the same way you did. Like, okay, well, this is it. And I think it's just such a beautiful experience that you had for yourself and the way
Like,
that it's
I'm really
manifested.
grateful for it. Yeah. I feel exactly the same, and, um, a lot of times, I think usually watching movies where you see someone, like, having a gun pointed at them or something,
Right.
I've wondered, "How would I feel in that situation?"
Right.
Because you can't know until you're really there, And I'm like, oh, that might be terrifying. But I am happy to know that I did believe I was going to die, and I was at peace with it.
Right.
Even though I was disappointed because I really didn't it didn't feel like the right time for me to die, and
Right.
I'm glad that I
Right. And it
didn't. But
wasn't,
yeah,
because it didn't happen.
yeah, it
So,
was
like, and here
yeah,
we are.
yeah. Mhm. Yeah, but I am grateful. I'm glad that I got to experience that and know, because I used to be terrified at the idea of death just because I was raised in a, Christian household with the idea of hell, and
Yeah,
I
I
was like,
dabbled in a little of that in childhood, and I always just thought, like, they're crazy. Like, I don't understand that at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, that doesn't make any
right?
sense to me. No one can ever answer my questions. I asked all these questions, and no one can ever answer them. So I'm
It's
like, I think I'm
true.
just gonna, I feel the energy. I always felt protected. I always felt guided, and I always trusted that. And I think that's something that I've really built my spiritual practice over the past, I would say, 4 years, more intensely, of just understanding what source, spirits, guides, whatever you want to call it, God, means to me. And knowing that and this is the one thing that always kind of makes me giggle a little bit about religion, is it's so different for every person, because every single person has such a unique life experience. How can we expect everyone to believe the same thing? And one of the biggest questions I asked when I was a kid, well, what about the kids that are born in this country and they're exposed to this? They're not exposed to this. That
Yes.
doesn't mean that they're bad. That doesn't mean that, like, why can't we all just get along and accept it? Like, if they believe something, that's
Mhm.
awesome. If they believe something, that's great. Like, why do we care? Why do we want to change them? Like, just accept it, honor it, and know that that's them. And I've kind of raised my kids to be neutral, and I want them to figure out what spirituality or what that means to them. I always encourage them to trust their intuition, and and trust the senses and the energy that they feel, and know that they're guided and protected, but leave it kind of up to them to build their own views on that, because I think it's just such a precious individual experience that we're all so different.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I admire you so much for figuring that out very quickly. It took me a lot longer, like 21 years.
It's harder when
But
you're raised in a
yeah.
certain household, like it's hard when you're
Mhm.
conditioned that way too. So my husband grew up in a
Yeah,
Catholic
that's true.
household, so it was very, he's had his own branch out and what he does, and kind of honestly really learning non-belief. Almost like learning non-belief, and like
Mm,
just trusting that,
yeah.
just feel it.
Yeah. And letting go. Yeah. But it's definitely a beautiful thing when you come to reach that place. And that's part of what I've loved about just yogic teachings and the Bhagavad Gita, and the idea that there are many paths to the same
Right.
destination, also in Buddhism.
Right.
Yeah.
And just understand and honoring all of that, and just going with the flow of it all. And I just feel
Going with
like
the flow again.
right. I just feel like, why can't we all just get along and respect each other, and like, why does it matter?
I know, I know. Instead of trying to force your beliefs on someone else. Yeah,
Yeah,
that would
it's
be
hard.
wonderful.
I feel like that's what's caused, my 14-year-old brought this up. She's like, "Isn't that what's caused like all the different wars?" I'm like, "Well, most of them.
Pretty much.
Most of them.
Yeah, most of them. Yeah.
Most of them. I'm not the biggest history buff in the world, but all the ones I know of." No.
Yeah.
So
Either
what
that or
other
power and control.
right, in which, again, surrender to that. Like, what is control anyway? What is
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. What
fear.
can you really control?
Right. What can you really
Yeah.
control? And it's like, really, I feel like control comes from fear of the unknown. And I know for me in my journey, I used to
Mm.
be kind of a control freak about things. I wanted things a certain way. I wanted things put away a certain way. I had to, certain control of what I ate, what I did, and I still am releasing a lot as I go along my path. There's no such thing as healed. It's always a journey.
Yes.
But
Yes. Yeah.
realizing ways that, gosh, there's so much freedom in just letting go of some stuff, whether it's, other people and what they're doing, or world views, and, try to really detach myself from a lot of that, and really not like identify with a lot of the things that I feel like that's giving me so much grace for myself and compassion for others. and
Yeah.
understanding that, hey, if that's what, go with your flow, I'll go with my flow. We'll all just flow our own way, and that's okay.
Yes, totally. And then you just are lighter. You're
Yes.
lighter and you feel better, like your spirit feels better. Yeah,
Yes. So what are the
it's a good
biggest
feeling.
things that so have you ever done a retreat before? You said you're going to Bali. So have you
Um,
hosted these retreats before, or is this your first big one?
I used to teach retreats on a regular basis when I was living in Cambodia and
Hmm.
working over there, but this is the first one that I've entirely planned myself and put together. But it's also it's been a lot of fun because it's kind of combining a little bit from my corporate past too, because I used to be in sales and would plan sales
Hmm.
conferences and usually in other countries. And so I do like that planning and the attention to detail because I think it's really the little things that make the difference. So,
I'm so
yeah.
excited for you.
Would it-
And how many days
Yeah,
is
I
it?
am
How long
too.
is the retreat?
They're both 1 week. Each is
Awesome. Are
gonna
you doing
be
back to back?
two kind of. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
There was originally gonna be one, and then it filled up really fast, and then there were more people who wanted to come, so they said, "Hey, can you plan a second one?" I said, "Oh, okay, I can stay in Bali longer." Sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you had to think about, after writing your book, doing your audiobook, you're doing these retreats, what does that look like for you? How do you feel about all of that?
Um, I love it. Um, you know what? I was thinking the other day because so I'm here with my partner and he goes to work at an insanely early hour, like 6:30 a.m. and then comes back around 6. So I have that whole day to just work and it's pretty much for the past year it's been like working on a book or
Mhm.
I'm also teaching yoga here so it might be like planning a yoga class or it'll be recording the audiobook. And also, oh, I didn't tell you my next venture will be photography as well.
Awesome. Which
So I've been
it pairs
thinking
perfectly with your travel, so that's amazing.
I've loved it for a long time, and I think photography is another way of storytelling,
Yes.
and
When it's
especially portrait photography.
And from your perspective, I always love and appreciate art and photography because I always just love to understand and try to see things through that person's perspective, whether it's like a piece of modern art or whatever it is, or photography, or just it's like, wow, that person took the time to create that or capture that. And what did that mean to them? I always feel like I kind of go deep into it. And I appreciate photography because it's just beautiful. It's artsy. It's my girlfriend Tootie, who I took a walk with her this morning, actually. If you come to Sarasota, you have to join her or you have to meet
I
her.
know. I do
She's a
want
boudoir
to.
photographer, and I just really love and admire her work because she brings out a different nature. There's just something if you're, I don't know, it just brings something out. I don't know, maybe I was something in another life. I don't even know, but there's something
A
about
mermaid.
photography. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just I'm so excited for you, and it has to be very humbling and exciting, and I know sometimes I kinda have to take a step back that's like and I don't know if you've done this for yourself yet, but if you haven't done it for yourself, I really encourage you to take a step back and celebrate yourself. Like, I've accomplished this. I've done this. I've changed this. I've implemented this. I've hosted and it's amazing how many people you're reaching right now, whether it's from your book and writing, your audiobook, your retreats. I mean, what you're doing it truly is magic.
It does feel like magic, and I'm really grateful for it, and, um, what I was gonna say about, when my partner goes off to work, what I've realized is, like, I spend a lot of time in front of the computer still, like, right? Whether it was
Mhm.
editing the audio or whether it's, because 'cause I've done some photo shoots for friends, so if I'm editing the photos, because a lot of photography is editing, which is
Mhm.
so fun as well, but I realized, like, wow. I remember when I used to work in the office and I would be like kind of watching the clock, like, oh, it's only 3 o'clock. Oh, it's only 4:20. And now I'm like, darn it, it's already 4:20. I need more time, because I'm just enjoying what I'm doing.
Right.
It's
And
so
it's
much fun.
fulfilling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
that's
it's,
such a
yeah.
great feeling. And that's when you know you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And that may shift, it may change. That's something that I've really tried to honor with myself. Like I mentioned earlier, I was doing something for a certain period of time and that shifted a little bit for me. And that's okay. And
Mhm.
it's going to shift some more. I mean,
Yeah.
every day we shift a little bit, right? We pivot, we learn, we grow, we experience different things, and it causes us to pivot and flow differently. And really
Yeah.
embracing that, I think that's been a really great learning curve for me, is learning to embrace the power of change and the power of choice. And that's something I don't think in
Mm.
my younger years I realized I had such a power of choice. We all do. But do we utilize it, you know?
Yeah. Not all the time. It's such a cool thing, and it really is being in the flow, right? Like going with all that change. And something I was thinking about this morning about flow was with the idea of groundlessness, because I think it's very human to want stability and to feel like your feet firmly grounded on something, just to feel grounded. But if you're in the flow, like the idea of being in the flow is that you're in the
Mhm,
water and you're moving, you're you are groundless,
mhm.
and
I
like
pretended to
to
be
be
a mermaid.
comfortable
I
with
still
that.
pretend to be a mermaid, I'm not gonna lie.
I
The
wanted to be I wanted to be a little mermaid, a mermaid when that movie
I
came out. I was like, "Oh, that's amazing."
Oh, mermaids are like they have to be the best. Yes, don't tell me they're not real because they are. I'm one of those people. I
Although,
swear by them. But I really do.
totally.
There's something like how magical would a life like that be if we could all just be a mermaid, live a magical life.
But I think if we were mermaids, we would wanna be human and have
Probably.
legs,
I mean,
probably.
Ariel figured it out eventually.
It'd be cool if we could go to have both, like, just go back and
Yeah.
forth, like, "Okay, sail on."
Right. She had it made. She could do both. That is so funny.
Yeah,
So
yeah, but,
anything you would love for my audience to hear from your perspective? Is there any words of wisdom, any spiritual kind of guidance, anything that you feel like has really helped you in your journey that you would like to put out there for others to hear before we wrap it up? Because there's so
what I'm
much.
thinking yeah, I'm thinking about that Rumi quote that says, "Your heart knows the way."
Right.
Which is so simple, and I know we love to complicate things, but according to what I've learned through my life and just through reading books and listening to other people, it really is about that. And, I believe that we're on this earth, like we're actually supposed to be happy,
Right.
we're not supposed to like have to be miserable in service to whatever. Like, because I think there's this intersection of doing what you love and bringing happiness to other people, because that is something that I love. Like, I love it when I know that something I did brought something to someone else, like somehow made their life better or brought them happiness or joy or just made them laugh or, whatever. And I think if you just trust that and just figure out like what is it that you really love to do, somehow it's gonna work out. And there might be curveballs along the way. Probably there will be,
Yep.
but
Curveballs, boulders, water, all the things.
although
All the things.
yeah.
However, but I really love that. And thank you for sharing that because I think that's been my biggest shift. I think I went through a period of time where I felt not purposeless, but I wasn't sure what my purpose was. And
Yeah. Been there. Yeah.
right. I mean, we all have in some way, shape, or form. And I realized that I was living, but I wasn't truly living. I was going through the motions and had a beautiful life and so many fun experiences, but I was lacking, I think, the intentionality behind it. And that's the biggest thing that shifted for me is I started following my heart. I wanted to share my story more. I wanted to connect more with people in different ways, just like you have been able to connect more with people in different ways and trusting that it's all happening for you and to trust
Yeah.
your heart and do what makes you happy. I do. It makes me sad to look around sometimes and see so many people just getting by and going through the motions and, but just find something. I know it's not practical for everyone to just pick up and move and go to a different country, but find something in your day that fulfills you, whether it's a walk outside or a hot shower or something that fills you up and makes you happy and just brings light and love into your life. And I think that that's something we all are capable of doing. We just have to allow
Mhm.
ourselves to be open for it. And that's
Yeah.
one thing that I noticed. I was kind of looking through some of my journals, and one thing I noticed was a pattern is stay open to receive, stay open to receive, stay open to receive. What I was realizing is at one point in time, I think I stopped being open to receive my own love. And once I started being
Um,
open to receive my own love, I was able to give more of that unconditional love and that compassion and understanding and acceptance. All the things just started to come into place when I allowed myself to receive the love.
I think that's so important, the being open part, right? Because I think like love and energy, it's all a channel, right?
Mhm.
So if it's closed somewhere, like it's blocking everything,
Yeah, there's a blockage.
right?
And like we were saying earlier, when there's those resisting moments, like if we can just look at resistance as a barrier or a blockage and let it go,
Yeah.
that allows you to stay open. It's like, oh, it's as simple as that, right?
I
And I'll
know,
remember
like,
that next
oh
time I
wow,
have
that
to.
was so simple.
Right.
I
It's so simple. But it
know.
really, if you have the awareness for it, you can change it. So, and I know that you have experienced
Yeah.
this on your journey, and I'm just very thankful that you took the time. We have a 14-hour time difference, and we made this fun podcast work.
I
And
know.
I'm just
Technology is amazing, right?
I
We're
mean,
on the other
technology it
opposite
really
side of the
is. I
world.
have a
Yeah.
love-hate relationship with technology. It's distracting to me in some ways. It's very humbling to me in some ways. In other ways, I love
Oh,
it so
yeah.
much. I love that I have
Yeah.
connections to people that love it more than I do. So it works out great.
Same. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was really a pleasure having you on. And I have so many girlfriends that have read your book. And now that they can listen to it, I'm sure going to have a lot more because I have a lot of girlfriends that are on the fly like I am. And just
Oh,
really
that's
look
so cool.
forward to you visiting sometime. I mean, we need to do like a book signing party. We'll do all kinds of fun stuff. So we will keep you guys posted on that. Hopefully, it's in the works.
I
Um,
am so excited about that idea. That feels very aligned and looking forward to it. January 2025. Wow, it's going to be 2025
I know
already.
I'm turning 40 February 4th. I'm excited.
I'm already 43, so
Well,
I can tell you the 40s are awesome.
I hear that. I hear that. So I'm excited for it. Thank you so much, Sonya. I
Yay.
appreciate you. And thank you for sharing your space and your heart and your time with me today.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. I'm so glad to have connected with you. And I'm so glad you have this podcast. I really love
Thank
it.
you.
I
Thank you.
I want everyone to listen to it.
And I'm honored that you're listening to it all the way in New Guinea. It's funny. I look at my
Yay.
podcast stats and I'm like, oh, that's Sonya. Like, that's her. That's her there. Like, there's like 60 countries on there, but I know her. I don't know anyone else in these other countries. Finland, no clue.
Another friend in Miami who has a podcast, and she told me the same thing. She's
Isn't
like,
it
I know when
funny?
you're listening.
So I will find you.
Yeah.
So if I see it pop up in Bali, I'll know who it is. But
Yeah,
thank you so
exactly.
much and have a wonderful retreat and keep us posted on the next one because I would love to join.
Will do.
Awesome. Thanks so much.